David had been working at the marketing firm for exactly 3 years when everything changed. It wasn't a dramatic change at first. Just small things. The way his colleague Priya smiled at him during meetings. The way their coffee breaks seemed to last longer than they used to. The way silence between them felt comfortable instead of awkward. They'd been working together for 6 months on the biggest project of their careers, the Reynolds account, a major retail chain that could make or break their entire quarter. David handled the creative side, while Priya managed client relations. They made a good team. Everyone said so. But lately, things felt different. It started during late nights at the office. When everyone else had gone home, and it was just the two of them, reviewing presentations and fixing last-minute details, Priya would bring him coffee without asking how he liked it. She just knew. 2 sugars, no cream. David found himself looking forward to those moments more than he probably should. His divorce had been finalized 4 months ago. The papers were signed, the apartment was divided, and his ex-wife had moved across the country for a fresh start. David thought he'd feel relieved. Instead, he just felt empty. Work became his escape. The office became more comfortable than his apartment. Priya never asked about his personal life. She didn't pry or offer unwanted sympathy like others did. She just treated him normally. That's what he appreciated most. With her, he could forget about the failed marriage and focus on something he was actually good at. The Reynolds presentation was scheduled for Friday. It was Tuesday evening, and they were nowhere near ready. David stared at his computer screen, trying to make sense of the latest round of client feedback. Nothing made sense anymore. The client wanted bold but conservative, eye-catching but professional, innovative but traditional. "This is impossible," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. Priya looked up from her laptop across the table. "We've handled worse." "Have we, though?" She smiled. That smile that made him forget he was exhausted. "Remember the Chen project? We had 24 hours and no budget. And we pulled it off." "Exactly." She closed her laptop and stood up, stretching. "We need a break. Let's get out of here." David checked his watch. 8:30. They'd been at it since noon. Where would we even go? Everything's closed. There's a diner 2 blocks away. Open 24 hours. Terrible coffee, but amazing pie. He hesitated. Something about leaving the office together felt different than working late together. More personal somehow. But his stomach rumbled, reminding him he'd skipped lunch. "Okay, let me grab my jacket." The night air was cool and refreshing after hours in the recycled office atmosphere. They walked side by side down the quiet street, not talking much. David noticed how their footsteps seemed to match pace naturally. The diner was nearly empty, except for a tired-looking waitress and an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner booth. They slid into a booth by the window. Priya was right about the coffee. It tasted like it had been sitting in the pot since morning. But the apple pie was perfect. "Can I ask you something?" Priya said suddenly. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. David's heart did a weird little jump. "Sure. Why do you stay so late?" "I mean, I know we have the presentation, but you're always here, even before this project." He wasn't expecting that question. He took a sip of terrible coffee. "Buying time. I guess I don't have much reason to rush home anymore." Priya nodded slowly. "I get that. After my dad passed away last year, I threw myself into work too. It's easier than dealing with an empty apartment." David hadn't known about her father. He felt guilty for never asking. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I don't talk about it much." She shrugged. But he could see the sadness in her eyes. "People either treat you differently, or they don't know what to say. So I just keep it to myself." "I understand that completely." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, eating pie and watching the occasional car drive past outside. David realized this was the most personal conversation they'd ever had. 6 months of working together, and he was just now learning something real about her. My marriage ended because I was never home, he heard himself saying. I worked all the time. Missed dinners. Missed weekends. Missed everything that mattered. And now I'm still working all the time, except there's no one waiting for me to come home. Priya reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. Just a moment of contact. But it felt significant. Maybe you're working all the time, because you're good at it. Because it gives you purpose. There's nothing wrong with that. David looked at her. Really looked at her. When had she become so important to him? When had her opinion started mattering so much? We should probably get back, Priya said, breaking the moment. Reynolds' presentation won't fix itself. They paid the bill and walked back to the office. The streets were quieter now. The city settling into its late-night rhythm. David felt something shifting between them. Something he wasn't sure he was ready for. Back at the office, they worked until midnight. The presentation was finally starting to take shape. Bold graphics with clean layouts. Innovative concepts presented in accessible ways. They were finding the balance the client wanted. As Priya packed up her laptop, she turned to David. Same time tomorrow? I'll bring better coffee. She laughed. Deal. David watched her leave, then sat back in his chair. 3 years at this firm. 6 months on this project. And suddenly, everything felt different. He wasn't sure if that was good or bad. He just knew that something had changed tonight, and there was no going back. Wednesday morning came too quickly. David arrived at the office with 2 cups of good coffee from the cafe near his apartment. He found Priya already at her desk, looking fresh despite their late night. You're early, he said, handing her the coffee. She took a sip and smiled. You remembered. Vanilla latte. Extra shot. He had remembered. Without even thinking about it. That should have been his first warning sign that things were getting complicated. The day passed in a blur of revisions and phone calls. The Reynolds team had sent new feedback overnight. They loved the direction but wanted changes. Always changes. David was starting to wonder if they'd ever be satisfied. By afternoon, tension was building. The presentation was in 2 days, and they were running out of time. Priya was on her 4th call with the client, her professional smile never wavering, even though David could see the frustration in her eyes. Yes, Mr. Reynolds, we can absolutely incorporate those changes. By tomorrow morning. Of course. She hung up and let out a long breath. They want to add 3 more product lines to the campaign. 3 more? We barely have time to finish what we're working on. I know. She rubbed her temples. But if we pull this off, it's a 3-year contract extension. That's security for the whole department. David understood. This wasn't just about them anymore. 10 people in their department were counting on this account. Jobs were on the line. He couldn't let personal exhaustion get in the way. Okay, let's do this. We'll split up the work. I'll handle the new graphics and layouts. You focus on the client presentation, talking points. They worked through lunch, through dinner. The office slowly emptied around them until once again, they were the only ones left. David's eyes burned from staring at his screen. But he kept going. The designs were coming together. They had to be perfect. Around 9 o'clock, Priya appeared at his desk with takeout containers. You need to eat. I'm fine. David, eat. She set the food down firmly. You can't create good work if your brain has no fuel. She was right. They ate together at his desk, reviewing what they'd accomplished. Despite the pressure, they were making progress. Real progress. Tell me something, Priya said suddenly. Why marketing? Why this job? David thought about it. I wanted to create things, tell stories. Marketing lets me do that. Every campaign is a story about why people should care about something. What about you? 1. I like solving puzzles. Client relations is all about figuring out what people really want. Versus what they say they want. It's like being a detective. You're good at it. We're good at it. Together. Holding his gaze. I've worked with a lot of people here. You're different. Wrote. Different how? You actually care. Most people just want to get through the day and collect their paycheck. You care about doing it right. And David felt warmth spread through his chest. You care too. That's why we work well together. The moment stretched between them. Priya looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead, she stood up. We should keep working. Only tomorrow left before the presentation. They pushed through until midnight again. When Priya finally left, David sat in the quiet office, thinking. He was developing feelings for her. Real feelings. But was he ready for that? His divorce was so recent, and they worked together. That complicated everything. He drove home through empty streets, his mind racing. What if these feelings ruined their working relationship? What if he was misreading everything? What if she didn't feel the same way? Thursday was chaos, pure chaos. The client called at 7 in the morning with more changes. Then the IT system crashed, deleting 2 hours of work. Then, the printer broke, right when they needed to print presentation materials. David wanted to scream. Instead, he took a deep breath and started over. Priya handled the client, her voice calm and reassuring even as everything fell apart around them. By late afternoon, they had everything back on track. The presentation was loaded, the materials were printed, and they'd rehearsed their talking points. They were as ready as they'd ever be. We've got this, Priya said, more to herself than to him. We do. You're amazing at what you do. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. David, can I tell you something? Chi. His heart started racing. Of course. These past 6 months, working with you, it's been the best part of my day. Even when things are stressful and crazy, I look forward to seeing you, to working together. I just wanted you to know that. David's throat felt tight. I feel the same way. More than I probably should. What does that mean? It means I think about you when I'm not here. It means I stay late not just because of work, but because I don't want the day to end. It means I'm developing feelings that make everything complicated. Priya was quiet for a long moment. Complicated because of work? Complicated because of everything. My divorce, office policies. The fact that we have the biggest presentation of our careers tomorrow. And I'm standing here telling you this. She stepped closer. Maybe complicated isn't always bad. Maybe not. But I don't want to mess this up. Our working relationship matters too much. It does matter. But so do we. As people. Outside of work. David didn't know what to say. They stood there in his office, the city lights glowing through the windows, everything hanging in balance. Let's get through tomorrow, Priya said finally. The presentation. Then we can figure out what happens next. Deal? Deal. She left him standing there, his heart pounding, knowing that after tomorrow, everything would be different. One way or another, they couldn't go back to pretending this was just a professional relationship. The line had been crossed, and all that remained was deciding what to do about it. Friday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. David barely slept. His mind kept replaying the conversation with Priya. Her words, the look in her eyes, the possibility of something more. But first, they had to survive this presentation. He met Priya in the lobby at 8. She wore a navy blue suit. That was all business. Her hair pulled back professionally. But when she saw him, her eyes softened. Ready? She asked. As ready as we'll ever be. The Reynolds Corporation headquarters was downtown in a glass tower that seemed to touch the clouds. They rode the elevator to the 42nd floor in silence, both reviewing their notes one last time. Mr. Reynolds was exactly as David imagined. Mid-50s, expensive suit, and an expression that gave nothing away. He sat at the head of a long conference table with 4 other executives, all watching with neutral faces as David and Priya set up. "Good morning," Priya began with perfect confidence. "Thank you for this opportunity. We're excited to show you what we've developed." For the next 45 minutes, they presented. David walked through each design, explaining the creative choices, the target demographics, the expected market impact. Priya handled the business side, discussing timelines, budgets, and projected returns. They worked together seamlessly. When David faltered on a statistic, Priya smoothly provided it. When Priya needed to show a visual example, David had it ready. 6 months of collaboration showed in every moment. The executives asked tough questions. They challenged assumptions. They pushed back on ideas. But David and Priya had prepared for everything. They had answers, alternatives, and backup plans. When they finished, the room fell silent. Mr. Reynolds stared at the final slide, his expression unreadable. David's heart hammered in his chest. Beside him, Priya stood perfectly still, waiting. "This is good work," Mr. Reynolds said finally. "Really good work." David felt Priya's hand brush against his, just for a second. "We had concerns about your firm," Reynolds continued. "You're smaller than the other agencies we considered. But this presentation shows creativity, attention to detail, and understanding of our brand. You've earned our trust." "Does that mean," Priya started. "It means you have the account. 3-year contract, with option to extend. My assistant will send over the paperwork this afternoon." They did it. They actually did it. David and Priya somehow maintained professional composure until they got back to the elevator. The moment the doors closed, they both let out huge breaths. "We did it." Priya grabbed his arms, her eyes shining. "David? We actually did it. I can't believe it. That was incredible. You were incredible. We were incredible." Together, the elevator descended, and reality started to sink in. They'd secured the biggest account of their careers. The department was safe. Their jobs were secure. Everything they'd worked for had paid off. Back at the office, their team was waiting. Word had spread fast. When David and Priya walked in, everyone erupted in cheers. Their boss, Mr. Chen, shook both their hands. "Outstanding work. This is exactly what this company needed. You two should be very proud." The rest of the day was celebration. Champagne in the conference room. Congratulations from colleagues. Emails of praise from upper management. David felt like he was floating. But through it all, he kept catching Priya's eye across the room. They'd said they'd figure things out after the presentation. Well, the presentation was done. Now, what? The office party wound down by 5. People headed home early to start their weekends. David was packing up his desk when Priya appeared. "Hey, want to go somewhere and actually celebrate? Just us?" "I'd like that." They ended up back at the diner. The same booth by the window. The same terrible coffee. But everything felt different now. The pressure was gone. They'd succeeded. And the conversation they'd been avoiding couldn't be put off any longer. "So," Priya said, stirring her coffee, "we need to talk about what happens next." "I know. I meant what I said yesterday. These past 6 months have been special to me. You're special to me. But I also understand if this is complicated for you. Your divorce, the office situation, all of it." David looked at her across the table. This woman who'd become so important to him, who understood him in ways he didn't expect, who made work feel less like work and more like something he looked forward to. "It is complicated," he admitted. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe complicated is worth it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. I want to see where this goes." I know there are company policies about workplace relationships. I know we'll have to be professional at the office. I know my divorce is recent, and I'm probably not the safest bet right now. But I can't ignore how I feel about you. Priya's smile was worth every risk. I want to try too. But we need to be smart about this. No hiding. But no making it office gossip either. We tell HR. We keep work and personal separate. And we take it slow. Slow sounds good. I'm not great at fast right now anyway. So what does slow look like? David thought about it. How about we start with dinner? A real dinner. Not takeout at the office or pie at a diner. An actual date. I'd like that very much. They sat there, coffee cooling in their cups, making plans. Not just for dinner, but for how to navigate this new territory. They talked about boundaries, about being honest with their team, about what they wanted from each other. As the sun set outside the diner window, David realized something. He'd spent months thinking his life was over after his divorce, that he'd failed at the one thing that mattered. But maybe he hadn't failed. Maybe he'd just been on the wrong path. Maybe this, right here, was the path he was meant to find. David? Yeah? I'm glad we're doing this. Whatever happens, I'm glad we're trying. Me too. They left the diner hand in hand, walking into the evening with hope instead of fear. 3 weeks passed in a blur of happiness David hadn't felt in years. He and Priya told HR about their relationship. Their boss, Mr. Chen, was supportive but clear about expectations. Professionalism at work. No special treatment. They both agreed readily. The Reynolds account kicked off successfully. David and Priya were assigned to different aspects of the campaign to avoid any appearance of impropriety. It made sense professionally, but David missed working directly with her every day. Their first real date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. No work talk allowed, they'd agreed. Instead, they talked about everything else. Their childhoods, their dreams, their favorite books and movies. David learned that Priya had wanted to be a teacher before falling into marketing. That she was afraid of heights, but loved roller coasters anyway. That she called her mother every Sunday without fail. Priya learned that David had played guitar in a band during college. That he still sometimes wrote songs late at night when he couldn't sleep. That his divorce had hurt not just because of the failure, but because he genuinely loved his ex-wife and couldn't figure out where they'd gone wrong. You know what I think? Priya said over dessert. I think you're the kind of person who gives everything to what matters to you. Your work, your relationships, everything. That's not a flaw. You just need to be with someone who appreciates that instead of resenting it. David reached across the table and took her hand. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. Don't let one failed relationship make you think you're broken. You're not. Note. They took things slow like they'd promised. Coffee dates before work. Lunch in the park on weekends. Long phone calls at night when they were both at home. David appreciated the pace. It let him rebuild trust in himself, in the possibility of partnership. But the office was starting to notice. Colleagues would smile knowingly when David and Priya arrived separately, but at the same time, the break room conversations would pause when they entered together. It wasn't hostile, just aware. People are talking, Priya said one evening as they walked through the city. Does that bother you? A little. But I expected it. We told HR. We're being professional. So we've done everything right. People will talk, regardless. My friend Allison from accounting said we're cute together. David laughed. Cute? I'm not sure I've been called cute since I was 12. Well, you are. Especially when you get focused on a design and you do that thing with your glasses where you push them up without realizing it. I do not do a thing with my glasses. You absolutely do. It's adorable. This was new territory for David. Playfulness. Lightness. His marriage had been serious from the start. Weighed down by expectations and timelines, and pressure to have everything figured out. With Priya, he could just be. No pressure, no timeline, just two people enjoying each other's company. But not everything was easy. 4 weeks into their relationship, David's ex-wife called. She was moving back to the city for a new job. She wanted to meet for coffee to discuss some final details about their shared investments. David agreed. But the call left him unsettled. That night, he was quieter than usual during his phone call with Priya. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I can hear it in your voice." He told her about his ex-wife, about the coffee meeting next week, about the weird feeling of having his past and present collide. "Do you want me to worry?" Priya asked gently. "Because I'm not going to. I trust you. But if you need space to process this, I understand. I don't want space. I want you. It's just strange, you know? 6 months ago, I thought my life was ending. Now I'm happier than I've been in years. And she's coming back. And it's just complicated. Life is complicated. That doesn't mean we can't handle it." Her understanding made everything easier. When David met his ex-wife for coffee, it was awkward but civil. She was happy for him. Genuinely happy. Said she could tell he'd moved on in a healthy way. They handled their business quickly, and as they parted, David felt a weight lift. He called Priya from the coffee shop parking lot. "It went fine. Better than fine. I think I finally have closure. I'm proud of you. That couldn't have been easy. Want to have dinner tonight? I feel like celebrating. Always." The Reynolds campaign launched in week 6. The initial numbers were strong. Client satisfaction was high. David and Priya's departments were praised company-wide. Everything was falling into place professionally and personally. But then came the complication they hadn't anticipated. Corporate announced a restructuring. The marketing and client relations departments would merge into one unified team. They'd be working directly together again. Same projects, same meetings, same daily collaboration. Mr. Chen called them both into his office. "I know you disclosed your relationship to HR, and I appreciate that. But now with the merger, you'll be working together constantly. I need to know if that's going to be a problem." David and Priya exchanged glances. "It won't be a problem," Priya said firmly. "We've been professional this whole time. That won't change." "I agree," David added. "We can separate personal and professional. You've seen us do it for 6 weeks already." Mr. Chen studied them both. "I believe you, but I'm also watching. If I see any favoritism, any conflict, any sign that your relationship is affecting your work or team dynamics, we'll need to make changes." "Fair?" "Fair," they said together. Walking out of his office, David felt Priya's tension. "You okay?" "Yeah, just the stakes got higher, you know? Now we have to prove we can make this work. Really work. Both the relationship and the professional partnership. We will. We've handled everything else. We'll handle this too." Priya stopped walking and turned to face him. "David, I need you to know something. I'm all in on this, on us. Whatever it takes to make it work, I'm committed. I'm all in too, completely." She smiled, and in that moment, David knew they'd figure it out. They'd handled impossible deadlines, difficult clients, and personal complications. They could handle working together while being together. They had to. Because what they had was worth fighting for. The department merger happened on a Monday morning. Desks were rearranged, teams were reorganized, and suddenly David and Priya were working side by side again, just like during the Reynolds pitch. But now with everyone watching to see if their relationship would cause problems. The first week was an adjustment. They had to consciously maintain professional boundaries. No lingering glances across the conference table. No inside jokes that others wouldn't understand. No touching, even casually, during work hours. It was harder than David expected. He wanted to share a smile when Priya made a clever point in meetings. He wanted to celebrate with her when their collaborative work impressed clients. But he held back, aware of eyes on them. Their colleagues were respectful but curious. During lunch breaks, people would ask casual questions about how they made it work. David and Priya developed a simple response. They respected each other professionally first. And that foundation made everything else possible. By the second week, something shifted. People stopped watching so closely. The novelty wore off. David and Priya proved they could collaborate effectively without any drama. Their work was strong. Their ideas complemented each other. The relationship enhanced their professional partnership rather than compromising it. "I think we're past the hard part," Priya said one evening during dinner at her apartment. "People trust that we know what we're doing." David relaxed into her couch, feeling at home in her space. "We do know what we're doing. At work, anyway. In relationships, I'm still figuring it out. We're both figuring it out. That's what makes it real." 3 months into their relationship, David realized he was in love with her. Not the desperate, anxious love he'd felt before. Something steadier, deeper, built on friendship and respect and genuine partnership. He didn't say it immediately. He waited for the right moment. It came on a Saturday afternoon when they were hiking in a park outside the city. Priya had finally convinced him to face his fear of heights on a trail with a scenic overlook. Standing at the edge, looking out over the valley, she took his hand. "See? Not so scary when you face it." "You know what's scary?" David said. "How much I've come to care about you. How much you've changed my life in just a few months." Priya turned to face him, the wind catching her hair. "That's not scary. That's beautiful. I love you," he said. Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you too. I have for weeks, but I was waiting for you to be ready." They kissed there on the overlook, and David felt something he hadn't felt since before his divorce. Absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Work continued to go well. The Reynolds account grew. They pitched and won 2 more major clients. David got a promotion to senior creative director. Priya was named head of client strategy. They were succeeding individually and together. 6 months into their relationship, they had their first real fight. It was about something small David had forgotten to call when he'd be late to dinner. But it escalated into something bigger. Priya felt like he was falling back into old patterns, prioritizing work over everything else. David felt like she didn't understand the pressure of his new role. They didn't speak for 2 days. It was miserable. David couldn't focus at work. He kept looking across the room at Priya, wanting to fix things but not knowing how. Finally, he left a note on her desk. Just 3 words. "Can we talk?" That evening, they met at the park, where they'd had their first real conversation months ago. They sat on a bench and talked honestly. About fears. About patterns. About what they needed from each other. "I'm scared of losing another relationship to work," David admitted. "But I'm also scared of failing at my job. I don't know how to balance it all." "You don't have to figure it out alone," Priya said. "That's what I'm here for. We're partners. In work and in life. But you have to let me in. You have to communicate instead of just working later and later. Assuming I'll understand." "You're right. I'm sorry. I fell into old habits without realizing it. And I'm sorry for assuming the worst instead of just asking you what was going on." They held each other on that bench as the sun set, both committed to doing better, to choosing each other consciously, every day. A year after their first date, David proposed. Not with a dramatic public gesture, but privately. In Priya's apartment. During an ordinary Tuesday evening, they were cooking dinner together when he turned to her and said, "I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" She said yes through happy tears. They got married 6 months later, in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Their colleagues threw them an office celebration. Mr. Chen gave a toast about how they'd proven that professionalism and partnership could coexist beautifully. Looking back, David could hardly believe how much had changed. 2 years ago, he'd been divorced, lonely, and convinced he'd failed at relationships. Now he was married to his best friend, thriving at work, and genuinely happy. The night of their wedding, Priya asked him, "Do you ever think about how we almost didn't take this chance? How we almost let it stay professional? All the time. I'm grateful we were brave enough to try." Me too. They'd proven that second chances were real. That timing mattered, but so did choice. That love, built on friendship and respect, could weather any storm. They'd taken a risk on each other when both were hesitant, and it had become the best decision either of them had ever made. Life wasn't perfect. They still had stressful work weeks and occasional disagreements, but they faced everything together as true partners. And that made all the difference. Their story wasn't about dramatic gestures or perfect timing. It was about two people choosing each other, every single day, and building something real, from genuine connection. And that, David thought, was the best kind of love story there was.